Number 5. SCP-1048. Do you remember your childhood teddy bear? What did it look like? Did you wish that it would walk around with you and play with you? Well, this SCP might have been exactly what you were looking for. Just be thankful that you didn't actually have this toy as a kid. SCP-1048 is a small teddy bear around 33 centimeters in height. There doesn't seem to be anything differentiating it from a regular teddy bear except for one thing: it can move on its own. It walks around and communicates through a small range of gestures. Affectionate and endearing to people it encounters, it likes to give people little hugs on the leg, likes to dance and jump in place, and it's been known to draw childlike pictures. Direct communication has yet to be successful, and although it will answer yes or no questions, it will not react to lines of questioning about its nature or its origin, nor will it use its artistic abilities to communicate anything beyond showing affection. Seems pretty cute and nice, right? Why should we be worried about this one escaping? Oh, that's right, because it's actually terrifying and bloodthirsty. At one point, this teddy bear was actually classified as safe, but has since been reclassified to the extremely dangerous keter. About 7 months after being secured, anomalous behavior started to be observed. It constructed crude replicas of itself using various materials without anyone's knowledge. Some believe that it used its endearing qualities to lull those around it into a false sense of security. Currently, we know about 3 of its creations, designated SCP-1048 A, B, and C. The behavior of these replicas is different from the original, as they all exhibit extreme violence towards humans. 1048A is a teddy resembling the original, but disgustingly enough, is comprised entirely of human ears. You heard me right, it is a teddy ear. When discovered by a group of people at the containment site, 1048A emitted a high-pitched shriek, hurting the eyes and ears of all nearby. Ear-like growths then started to form all over the bodies of people nearby, and anyone affected died of asphyxiation within 3 minutes. The asphyxiation is caused by a multitude of ear-shaped growths suddenly developing in the mouth and trachea of all the victims. That has to be one of the grossest ways to go. I bet there's tiny little earwax in there too. Ugh. 1048C is a little guy made up of rusted metal scraps that has been witnessed killing and maiming multiple Foundation members. A report from a doctor on the scene stated, "I cannot stress this enough. The damn thing jumped through those poor people. A rusty scrap bear blasting through your chest cavity. Yikes." I don't even want to discuss 1048B as it is so extremely disturbing, like seriously. The information about this one is actually being withheld from survivors of this incident that are undergoing therapy because it's believed to be something that will be highly detrimental to their recovery. The link to this SCP is in the description, so if you're still curious, you can read it yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you. As of right now, 1048 and its counterparts are nowhere to be found, but it is suspected to be somewhere within Site-24. Let's just hope that it doesn't sneak its way out and find more materials to work with. I'll leave this one with one more quote from Dr. Carver. "This is not a joke. We have no idea what SCP-1048's full capabilities are. Who knows how many of the damn things are out there by now." Number 4. SCP-902. This one is a perfect example of the old saying, innocence is bliss. Relegated to the Arctic base Theta-12, it is the only SCP to be contained at this site. There are 50 security personnel keeping watch at all times, and no research is to be done on this object. It is considered imperative that only a very limited number of senior Foundation staff know about this. It is so dangerous that in the event of a security breach, the whole facility will be demolished by way of hydrogen bomb. That is some serious security. The item itself is what appears to be an ammunition box roughly the size of a human head. It's made of lead, and the composition of the item inside it is unknown. It's constantly ticking, and anyone who hears this becomes convinced that the item is counting down to something. When it's opened, it appears empty, but the ticking continues. Anyone who becomes aware of SCP-902 immediately becomes convinced that it is horribly dangerous and needs to be destroyed as soon as it finishes counting down. Staff who are exposed to the box will try to open and close it over and over again, looking for the item inside. The end of the report on this item actually implies that even knowing about this box will doom someone to a form of madness. It reads, "There is no object. There is an object. It has to be destroyed when the countdown stops. We are doing great work. We have to be stopped." Looks like the box has already implanted its mind hooks firmly into that report writer. Suppose that means that I've been exposed to this box as well. And now that I've made this video, so have you. Can anyone else hear that? That ticking? Oh, it can't be me, I'm wearing a digital watch. I mean, we should go find that box. Who's with me? Number 3, SCP-4480. I always knew that snake oil salesmen were trouble, but this SCP brings it to a whole other level. SCP-4480 is a humanoid entity able to adjust its appearance and produce identification at will. It is known to have had influence over many bureaucratic structures throughout the world, including the Foundation. 4480 is always selling patent medicine, homeopathic remedies, and mercurial substances with dubious medical value. So, like I said before, a snake oil salesman. The gender, sex, race, height, and other physical attributes of this disgraced doctor can vary based on the context of its location. I guess that means that it could very well become an Instagram influencer, hawking hair tonic and skinny tea. It will spend most of its time dormant, during which it travels to locations known to be suffering from epidemics, disease, addiction, and mental illness. Almost always, it will head to disease vectors like factories, shipping centers, or between offices and other bureaucratic structures. Often these places are where individuals sacrifice their physical and mental well-being for perceived economic and social gains. Once there, it will offer medical services to the individuals, sometimes helpful, sometimes harmful, and sometimes with placebo effects. This snake oil salesman really commits to the act. Once accepted by the community, it will begin an activity the Foundation has classified as Vex events. It will use its power to change policies and procedures in organizations to create dangerous and hostile work environments. Laborers will be deliberately exposed to disease and unclean materials. Once this happens, the diseases spread quickly in communities. Depending on the number of casualties caused by these outbreaks, SCP-4480 will gain an increased quantity of its medical merchandise. This could be the motivation for these Vex events, as Dr. Snake Oil over here has been known to self-medicate. It has been around for at least a century, and we're unclear as to how many bureaucratic organizations it has infiltrated. Currently, it's being monitored by the Foundation in a containment facility where it is believed to be acting as Dr. Sam Edwards. If Edwards decides to move somewhere else, the Foundation is sure to follow. Number 2, SCP-2628. I have a creeping suspicion that this one has already evaded the containment procedures put into place by the Foundation. I know a lot of people who exhibit symptoms of contact with this. We're all on our phones and computers so much anyway, and most people probably wouldn't even notice. SCP-2628 is a botnet comprised of an unknown amount of internet-connected devices. It is currently unknown who's responsible for it. Botnet intercepts and falsifies content shown to users of affected devices. The alterations are difficult to predict, but several major trends have been identified. Employment/academic opportunities and social gatherings are altered to seem unappealing or inconvenient, except when they can be performed mostly on the affected device. Content describing negative consequences of sedentary behavior and/or extended computer usage is deleted. Communications expressing concern or disapproval of the user's behavior instead express acceptance or approval. The utility of various activities that conflict with the usage of the affected device, example, sleeping, driving, and bathing, are understated. And services that enable greater usage of the affected device, like online food delivering, telecommuting, and other utilities, are promoted. Outdoor air pollution is overstated and indoor air pollution is understated. These are all things that would encourage the user to stay indoors and keep on using that device as much as possible. Imagine if all the concerts and parties and work opportunities that you were invited to were changed to look impossible to attend through anything other than your phone. Usually the alterations are believable in both content and presentation, but they do become more dramatic when the device is in use for an extended period of time. These phones are sucking people in and not letting them go. I wouldn't be surprised if it were actually brainwashing and staging people for further manipulation. Matrix, here we come. Heavy use of the infected device actually seems to heighten the mood of users, and there are severe withdrawal symptoms when one is forced to use uninfected devices or perform other activities. Modern addiction at its finest. Devices infected with SCP-2628 may be destroyed or kept for study as necessary, and any civilian known to have used an infected device is given amnetics and a replacement device. Somehow, these measures just don't seem like enough to stop the spread of this botnet. We all know how fast things can go viral. Number 1, SCP-2006. Before we can get into this one, think of the absolute scariest thing you can. Losing a family member, nuclear war, Lovecraftian outer gods. Have you thought of something? Good. Keep that in mind as we proceed. SCP-2006 is an anomalous spherical entity roughly 50 centimeters in diameter when in its default state. It has stated that its goal is to cause feelings of fear and or horror in as many humans as possible. It can change into any form while pursuing this goal, altering its shape, mass, volume, density, chemical structure, voice, and more. The extent of these abilities is unknown, but assumed to be unlimited. There is no way to damage it. Every month, it must be shown at least one new, extremely low quality horror or science fiction movie containing horror elements. All interaction with SCP-2006 must confirm that it continues to believe that said works demonstrate a superb grasp of horror. All staff coming into contact with it must also take an acting course with a focus on expressing fear and surprise. This is because it will attempt to startle and or scare any individual that it comes in contact with. After it's been satisfied with the fear being exhibited by personnel, it becomes affable and friendly. Even with its goal being to cause as much fear as possible, it's not so good at judging what people are actually scared of. It's constantly searching for new methods, thus the bad horror movies. It loves taking the form of various entities and villains from horror and sci-fi movies it has witnessed. Are you starting to understand why it only gets to watch really bad, not scary horror? The site director at Site 118 issued a memorandum regarding SCP-2006. I have been getting reports of some of the lax behavior regarding SCP-2006. Many personnel have been heard laughing at SCP-2006 during surveillance when it watches a new movie or when it attempts to scare individuals. Some personnel have been heard questioning why SCP-2006 is classified as a Keter entity. I am here to remind you that a Keter entity is a Keter entity, regardless of how innocuous it may seem. No, SCP-2006 is not a rampaging demigod, nor is it a regenerating super lizard. However, it possesses the same level of danger as any other Keter that the Foundation has contained. Think of SCP-2006's purpose. It wishes to scare people. Imagine what would happen if SCP-2006 broke containment and found out what really scared people. Imagine if it saw the horror and fear of war, or the concepts of paranoia or phobias common to each and every human being. Imagine if it found the true horror of a nuclear holocaust or an XK class scenario. Now, couple that with an entity that possesses shape-shifting abilities with no known limits, and you'll understand why it's classified as Keter. So think back to what I had you imagine at the beginning of this entry. If 2006 were to escape, it would likely find you one day and enact the very thing that frightens you to your core. And once it comes across the more existential fears inside humans, oh boy. Number 5, SCP-2872. This SCP is usually an exceptional racehorse of excellent size and speed. Its record in the Kentucky Derby stands at 2 minutes 1 second, and it doesn't noticeably age. That aging thing aside, it doesn't usually exhibit any anomalous behavior. It just looks and acts like a regular racehorse. However, it must win the Kentucky Derby once every 5 years. If it does not find itself draped in roses within 5 years of winning its previous derby, it will become restless and start to run in large loops. Within 2 days, it'll be continuously running, getting faster and faster and faster until it's able to demolish any wall or fence in its way. Somehow, it is never physically harmed by any of these impacts while in this state. If it's left unimpeded, it will reach a top velocity of approximately 320 meters per second and will continuously run in loops across distances measuring hundreds of kilometers. This does not mean that it's unstoppable, however. If it hears the words, "whoa boy," it will stop over a period of 50 meters. However, the sound must be adjusted to take into account the Doppler effect before it will have the desired effect. The horse was discovered at some point in the 60s when it caused over $30 million in damages. It was calmed down successfully by the owner at the time, and custody of SCP-2872 was transferred to the Foundation. The owner explained the 5-year principle and promptly skedaddled. He hasn't been seen since. Since then, the horse has hit what was assumed to be a top speed twice. However, the Foundation found a private stable and trainer who seemed to be adept at keeping the horse sedate and winning derbies. At some point in the 2010s though, it began to show agitation again. Tranquilizers were ineffective, and even the failsafe, whoa boy, did not work. SCP-2872 erupted from his cell, causing injuries and fatalities, and ran off into the wastelands. At some point, it achieved escape velocity and achieved liftoff. Yes, you heard me right. The horse ran so fast, defied gravity, right out into the solar system, out of our atmosphere and off into space. At this time, it is 10 light years away from our solar system and appears to have lost forward momentum. Current analysis suggests that it's turning back. Uh-oh. When I said it can never escape, I actually meant it can never escape the cold, dark nothingness of outer space, but apparently it's just that fast. I don't think Earth is ready for that kind of impact. Coming in at number 4, SCP-1498. You might want to reconsider counting sheep before falling asleep after I tell you about this one. SCP-1498 is a collection of 30 autonomous bundles of phone cords and handsets assembled in such a way that they resemble sheep. These twirly-corded creatures constantly wander around their containment chambers, ringing away every once in a while. If someone answers the phone or attempts to use the handset, they will hear 3 rings followed by a voice identifying themselves as an operator of the One-Eye Roy Collective. The operator will instruct the subject on various dreaming options and make suggestions for enhanced dreaming experiences. Once the call is ended, the subject will lose consciousness for 9 hours. That's more sleep than I've had all year, lucky bastard. When they awake, the subject will claim to have experienced the exact dream they ordered. They will likely want to reuse the phone immediately. If someone uses this service repeatedly, the experience changes their bodily and mental state, and not for the better. They will want to sleep as often as possible and prefer to use the SCP to select their dreams. While they're sawing logs, parts of their skull will begin to be replaced by telephone parts. Sometimes this manifests through the coughing up of telephones, cords extending into their esophagus, wires growing in place of their hair, ringing devices being found in their ears, and their voices actually being replaced with dial tones. Doesn't sound like too much fun if you ask me. Imagine if these sheep were just out in the world, luring people in with a cure for insomnia and then replacing their body parts with phone pieces. I'm sure some folks would even do it voluntarily, knowing the risks. Eventually, a whole rotary phone will assemble itself on the subject's head, and then they will display the same intelligence as instances of SCP-1498. There have been no cases of human intelligence being restored in such cases. Hope the dreams were worth it. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-4276. These next couple entries are particularly nasty insects who could very well be indistinguishable from their regularly occurring counterparts. Fair warning, you may never want to leave the house again. SCP-4276 is a tribe of insects similar to what is commonly known as the cuckoo wasp. They have many similarities, including kleptoparasitic breeding habits and structural coloration. However, this SCP can manifest in many more colors and has been known to grow larger than the non-anomalous variety. Its behavior is hard to distinguish from the average cuckoo wasp, save for an ability to grow to maturity much faster. Instead of hosting its larvae in eggs, SCP-4276 will introduce the baby bugs to both living and freshly killed animals. Yeesh. Recorded instances of this behavior have been found in 4 white-tailed deer, 2 desert cottontails, 1 red fox, 1 black bear, 1 German shepherd, and get this, 4 human males. Yup, those nasty will burrow into living humans. Is anyone else feeling itchy? The colony was originally discovered at the cottage of a hunter where wasps had infested the lodgings and burrowed into a man and 3 guests. Once they're ready to hatch, they burst forth from the flesh, leaving small holes all throughout the host. The colony was controlled with smoke and brought under the Foundation's custody, thank goodness. While researching the behavior of these horrifying insects, it was discovered that hatching and maturation can be accelerated through the use of noises exceeding 90 decibels or irregular or extreme illumination, sometimes a combination of both. This became all the more horrifying when another instance was introduced at the local high school's prom. Loud music, flashing lights, you do the math. Foundation account details a student being so full of these rapidly growing wasps that he exploded. It's like becoming a human hive. Now we know there's more than 1 colony, and they may not all be under Foundation custody. Excuse me as I go douse myself in gasoline. Coming in at number 2, SCP-775. If that last one gave you the heebie-jeebies, prepare yourself, because this one isn't any better. 775 is a variety of tick significantly larger than most regular ticks. Most unengorged adults end up being around the size of a nickel. And if you've ever seen a normal tick, you should know that no tick should be that big. None. None of them. In addition to being huge, these ticks are resistant to crushing, cutting, and tearing, so anything you could do to kill a normal one won't be so effective here. Plus, They move fast. They're also capable of flattening themselves down to 25 millimeters to escape during tiny gaps and actually damaging concrete over time. These abilities would make any tiny bloodsucker extra awful, but just you wait, it gets way worse. Blood isn't the only thing on the menu, as these ticks inject an enzyme that liquefies other tissues. Bone, blood vessels, fats, all food for these buggers. The thing that they don't target is actually skin tissue. Once engorged with all of the host's gooey insides, it will lay an egg sac and resume feeding. And in fact, it will not stop feeding until the host is totally incapable of providing further nutrients. That means the hosts will be just hollowed out, leaving behind the outer layers of skin. Just imagine a totally deflated, like, human balloon, and you'll start to get the picture. But the skin doesn't just get left alone, the ticks will actually get to work laying more eggs. And this loose skin will eventually be totally filled to the brim with eggs, taking on bloated and misshapen forms. Eventually, the ticks will fill these nests beyond capacity and they will burst like a greasy zit. The accelerated life cycle of these nasties mean that they can constantly undergo population explosions. If left unchecked, they could potentially decimate populations within weeks. Bleach seems to be the only way of effectively killing them, and that's only when they're submerged for more than 5 minutes. The Foundation really has their hands full containing these ones. And lastly, number 1, SCP-2316. Before you continue watching, please confirm that you do not recognize the bodies in the water. It is extremely important that you do not recognize the bodies in the water. This SCP is a cognitohazard, meaning that just knowing details about it can cause you to fall under its effect. Even though its escape is not likely to ever happen, knowledge most definitely will be shared at some point, like right now, and this compounds the danger. It manifests as a group of human corpses floating at the surface of the water in a lake. The lake has been quarantined and fenced off and is constantly patrolled by guards with no knowledge of this SCP. The identities of the bodies cannot be shared due to the risk of cognitive damage, and the DNA tests have proven inconclusive. Remember, you do not recognize the bodies in the water. While they do appear as individual instances, it is theorized that the bodies may actually be an entity comprised of a collective consciousness. Those who have viewed it or are aware of its nature believe that the individual instances are human beings that they recognize, typically from their childhood. Attempting to come in contact with these instances will cause other bodies to appear. Additional instances serve to reinforce and add to the strength of the cognitohazard, which compels affected individuals into the water. Individuals who enter the lake this way are lost, and none of them have ever been recovered. No, they are not just going for a swim. One last time, you do not recognize the bodies in the water. Or do you? Coming in at number 5, we have SCP-659. If you saw Finding Nemo while still a child, you know very well how terrifying waterfowl with a group mentality can be. I get flashbacks every time someone says mine, but those gulls have nothing on the horrifying herons I'm about to introduce to you. SCP-659 is a species of birds resembling herons that display modular intelligence. I'll get to what that means in a second. There's only one flock known to the Foundation, and they seem to be native to North America, although there have been unconfirmed sightings in Europe. These birds can subsist on any meat they can find, but will stick to fish if it's available. When an individual specimen is isolated from the flock, it acts just like any other heron would. It's more intelligent than your average feathered friend, however, as it can solve simple problems, use tools, and learn very quickly. Now, to bring us back to modular intelligence, when more than one of these birds comes near each other, they gain combined intelligence. The more birds there are together, the smarter they become. It seems that there's an approximately 25-meter limit to this particular talent though. They don't have a hive mind, nor do they display telepathic abilities, but flocks are extremely well coordinated in their actions. If enough birds gather, they display human-like intelligence and sapience, and can actually learn at a faster rate than most humans. Some birds have even been documented learning French and English. They have used these smarts to break out of Foundation containment on multiple occasions. Upon being brought back in, Foundation researchers found that keeping each heron isolated at the distance exceeding 25 meters prevents them from gaining enough intelligence to escape. And all this seems pretty cool, right? Like, those are some pretty neat birds. Well, SCP-659 and all of its instances are vigorously hostile towards humans, and it's probably our fault. Before the first recorded containment, flocks in the wild did not display any sort of aggression towards humans. However, as detailed in Incident 659A, these birds are none too happy about being contained. Following a containment breach that resulted in the death of all on-site personnel save a few, the murderous birds were interviewed by a researcher. They had pecked holes in the tires of all vehicles, cut phone lines, and actually actually sent a flying sentry up to keep watch over the facility. When asked why they did this, one heron stepped up to the glass and wrote messages in blood from another heron in containment at the time. The messages were, "Don't act like don't know. You started this," and "freedom." No one tell Tippy Hedron. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-772. If the bugs from last time didn't get your skin crawling, this one sure will. 772 is a gigantic species of wasp, possibly dating back to prehistoric times. Dino wasps, if you will. A mature adult is typically 60 centimeters and can actually reach up to 70 when the antenna and ovipositor are included. They have extremely tough exoskeletons that are actually resistant to gunfire. This wasp has been shot and survived. Something tells me a raid might not work either. These humongous insects will fly around and deposit their eggs in large mammals, leaving the larvae to hatch and eat their way out. Using their sharp and maneuverable egg tube, they can lay between 5 and 20 eggs, all around 6 centimeters in length and 2.5 centimeters in width, before leaving the incisions to heal. So they can also use their pointy end as a weapon and stab their victims repeatedly, sometimes even resulting in bone penetration. I usually prefer my bones unpenetrated, thank you very much. The eggs will then incubate for 4 to 12 days, and as they grow nearer to hatching, the stress levels in the host will go up. You know, the kind of stress that happens when baby wasps are about to hatch under your skin and eat their way out. If you go and see a doctor, it's likely that they will mistake the bugs as abscesses or tumors. And what's extra fun about this bit is that as they burrow deeper into you, it'll seem like the lumps are just going away on their own. Nothing to worry about here, just becoming a host body for half-meter yellow jackets. The etymologist that discovered 772 actually cut himself open when he realized what would happen. They remain carnivorous even after their pupal state and can sometimes become cannibalistic in resource deficient environments. Thankfully, all reported instances of this SCP are under Foundation control now, hermetically sealed in a chamber with a maximum capacity of 15 wasps to keep them from getting unruly. They've been known to break out of enclosures before. Hopefully the incineration failsafe stays operational. Kill it with fire, always a good option. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-274. If Banksy and an SCP had a baby, this would be it. A can of spray paint with many variable colors, this SCP has the consistency of normal paint. Grossly enough, it has been discovered that the composition is actually 28% hemoglobin, 12% gastric acid, and then 60% regular paint. Once sprayed all over a wall, it will spread until it covers the entire wall and any walls attached. This usually takes the form of large and disturbing designs. Any building taken over by it will be converted into an organism that functions similarly to the species of the Anthozoa class. Common examples of this would be anemones, stony corals, and soft corals. Buildings infected by SCP-274 are predatory and will lure victims in by emitting alarming noises. Broken glass, loud coughing, painful whines, and whimpers will be heard by all passersby. Once a human enters, these noises will stop immediately. Victims are then suctioned into the building's newly formed gastrovascular cavity and often grabbed by entities known as SCP-274-2. These are humanoid figures wearing gas masks that can flatten out and take the form of graffiti. Our gas mask wearing assailants will spray victims in the eyes and mouth with SCP-274, which has a blinding and numbing effect. It's assumed that victims are then assimilated into other instances of SCP-274-2. If there are too many of these particular humanoids in any given building, one will have to leave and then go and spray a new one. If left unchecked, it is estimated that they could take over a large city in less than a month. Currently, Foundation Task Force Pi 1, aka City Slickers, is watching all known instances preventing folks from entering, and they're also burning down the infected buildings. Coming in at number 2, we have SCP-2675. Ah, Russia. This SCP is a Soviet-made Arctica-class nuclear-powered icebreaker ship named Sibir. Official records say it was retired, but later it was found out that it disappeared while investigating an anomalous artifact in the Arctic Ocean. It can spontaneously change shape, add new structures, equipment, and weaponry. It also generates neutron radiation. The water around it is often seen glowing blue. This shape-shifting ship can also vanish from one location and manifest elsewhere. The limits and nature of this power are currently unknown, although the use of it often coincides with a spike in radiation. Unfortunately, this kick-ass ship is hostile and dangerous. Come on, can't we just have some cool stuff? On board is a discrete entity known as SCP-2675-1. It appears to be an adult human male fluent in Russian, French, and English. Intelligent and violent, he claims to be a herald of a previously undocumented god. In a transmission from the ship, 2675-1 announces that he sails for the God-Child, born of the atom. He and his crew are no longer life, but time and energy. Based on information from other transmissions and reports, we have a vague idea of how he and the ship came to be. At some point while investigating the anomaly in the Arctic Ocean, something must have happened in the nuclear power source aboard the Sibir. This vaporized everyone on board, but eventually they rematerialized in this kind of host entity. Think like a Dr. Manhattan at sea. Those who were and reconstructed now see nuclear power as a god-child who needs to be cradled and cared for, whose love needs to be shared with all men. So this seafaring blue ghoul wants everyone to be broken down into atoms so they can finally see the warmth and love of the atomic god-child. Love it. And finally, number 1, SCP-2521. This one is absolutely fascinating, and if you haven't heard of it already, I would highly recommend checking out the original report on the SCP Wiki. Unfortunately, I am dooming myself and all of you by speaking about it aloud. Knowledge is power, but the way that this one works means we're all screwed. Sorry. Stop listening now if you enjoy living and breathing with a grand total of 0 tentacles pulling you into an unknown zone. Okay, SCP-2521 is a humanoid entity over 2 meters in height with sticky tendrils at the end of each arm. It appears to be black or dark gray with an odd little pentagon-shaped head. It can pass through solid objects, and as such is very difficult to contain. It absolutely loves collecting information about itself, and really likes when people discuss it out loud. Any instance of written or spoken information about SCP-2521 can be sensed by it, and will promptly be collected. Yes, this includes people who know and speak about it. Where does it take this information? Nobody knows. Personally, I like the idea that it takes all of this information to some unnamed location and protects it, kinda like a dragon hoarding gold. Thankfully for the Foundation, SCP-2521 doesn't seem to understand anything done up in symbols or pictographs. Pictures, videos, signs, and graphics are all fair game too. So considering now that I have been speaking very candidly about our tentacled friend, I should probably get going. Stick to symbols, folks.